With Season 2 of Dr. Stone coming around the corner, or actually, it may have already come out. How'd I do for you, Jimmy? Did I make it on time? No? Well, anyway, I think it's a good time for me to put my 2 cents in about the anime. And I have to say, Dr. Stone blew all my expectations out of the water. Just like Death Note and The Promised Neverland, it changed the idea of what a shonen anime could be. I mean, ask any anime fan to define what a shonen anime is, and they'll most likely describe an anime with a lot of action, fantasy, adventure, and all sorts of things that are geared toward young boys. But with Death Note and The Promised Neverland, they introduced horror and most importantly, the psychological genre into the mix, giving the audience these amazing back and forth battles of intelligence throughout the shows. And because of this, both of these animes have been received massively well. So, with the addition of Dr. Stone, there was some elements of psychological conflict within it, but what I think is the most important aspect to the anime, and what makes this a unique addition to the shonen world, is that it's all about using your own wits and the application of science to solve any problem that comes in your way. Not only that, but the way the anime presents and executes these elements is truly brilliant, and is the main reason why I think this anime is needed in the Shonen Jump world. But that is also why I think this will pave the path into a brighter future. Now, at first glance, the theming of science may not be appealing to kids. I mean, why would anyone willingly watch a show that seems educational? It kind of reminds people of shows like Blue's Clues, Sesame Street, Dora the Explorer, etc, etc. These shows all have one thing in common. They're all for literal babies! Now, I see you in the comments going like, but wait, what about Bill Nye the Science Guy? He was the best! Listen, we all know Bill Nye is the best, but he is like a rare case in my explanation. I'll get back to talking about him later in the video. Now, getting back on topic, the creator of the manga, Inagi R.T.O, had to add something to this theme of science to make it appealing, and he definitely did it with the plot. So, unless you've been petrified for the past 3,700 years, you should know the plot of this anime. But just in case, for anyone who hasn't seen the anime or needs a quick refresher, cause it has been a while since season 1, we start off the anime introducing our main characters Senku and Taiju, quickly learning that Senku is a kid genius and Taiju is more like your average shonen male main character. Then out of nowhere, a mysterious green light turns everyone in the world and for some reason, all swallows as well into stone statues. Fast forwarding 3,700 years, our same 2 main characters were able to get freed from the petrification. It's now up to them to figure out how to save all of humanity who got petrified and bring them back to the world they lost. So from this very basic summary on what this anime is about, it seems like your typical shonen anime. Which is actually a good thing in this case, because remember, we want kids to be intrigued by this anime. But even after just 1 episode of Dr. Stone, they were able to include these scientific elements that helped explain so many things that just seemed like fantasy. For example, how come our main characters were freed from the petrification? Using Taiju as our average shonen protagonist, we are to believe that he had just pure willpower of never giving up and always believing that they were going to get freed. But later in the episode, this was immediately destroyed, saying there was an explanation for every coincidence. The anime showed us that because the petrified bodies were being exposed to nitric acid for over such a long time, the petrification was weakened, which allowed them to get free. This scene here not only helps explain why our main characters got out of the petrification, but it's a great introduction of the scientific elements that are going to keep reappearing within the anime. Soon after that, we see Senku and Taiju experimenting on finding a faster way of undoing the petrification, and this sequence helps bring the show back a little bit more into reality. This then leads to one of my favorite lines that Senku has.
地道なもんだ。ファンタジーに科学で勝ってやんぞ。
This line of Senku saying, "I'm going to defeat fantasy with science," has so many layers within it, at least for me. Because for me, the way I interpreted this was that anything throughout history that seemed like fantasy, quote unquote, was then later explained through science. It may not have been done overnight, but as Senku said before in this episode, that science is the slow process of finding the rules behind whatever you're trying to explain. This very basic explanation of what the main foundation of what science really is truly beautiful and honestly quite poetic. The fact that a shonen anime is giving off these scenes within just 1 episode is just amazing. and such a breath of fresh air comparably to most other shonen out there. Now, I also want to give even more credit to Inagi Ichido, because he made sure that this anime didn't feel like you're in school or Mrs. Wingraves is giving you a step-by-step lecture on how electricity works on a blackboard. No, it feels like you're watching a goddamn anime where Senku is literally showing you how to make a rudimentary generator out of giant copper discs and magnets. Inagi just knew how to implement all these scientific elements in an entertaining way without the audience never noticing you're actually learning. Let's take my favorite example from the show, the scientific method. Now, as most people know, the scientific method is the process used to conduct research and experiments on any question you have in the scientific field. But if we want to find out how accurate Dr. Stone is in showing the scientific method, we first have to go over all the steps of it. Now, bear with me here, I'll try to go over this as quickly as possible. So the very first step is to ask a question, then do some background research. With that, form a hypothesis, then test your hypothesis with a ton of experiments. After that, analyze your data. And then finally, if your results align with your data, good job. But if your results don't align at all or just a little bit, it's back to square one with some revisions. Okay, now that that's all out of the way, it's time for the fun part. All we have to do now is to review the episodes of Dr. Stones and compare and check off errors where the scientific method is being shown. So going back to the chart, we need to find a scene where Senku asks a question. Here in episode 6, Senku does just that, asking how did he get out of the petrification. Boom, so that's a check mark right there. Next, he starts recalling any data he has about the statue itself and the way he was freed from the petrification and looking around the area he was freed. That's another check mark for the background research. Right after that, he discovers the cave with the bats and makes a hypothesis that this liquid dripping down was the outside factor that caused the depetrification. He immediately tests this by pouring nitric acid on multiple petrified things. And bada bing bada boom, that's 2 more checkmarks off for the scientific method. Then, after multiple fails of the results, he goes back to square one with a different approach. Then soon after, he comes up with the idea of using R.T.O. And then after that, with more and more experimenting, he figured out the formula of the revival fluid. That, my friends, is the final checkmark for the scientific method. The accuracy that Dr. Stone executed right there is truly elegant, and once again, it didn't feel like you were getting lectured about it, it just felt like you were watching an anime. So when kids see this and they replicate the same steps and perseverance Senku showed within the anime, they're literally doing the scientific method without noticing. This all comes back to what I've been trying to say this entire video. Dr. Stone is a show that will 10 billion% inspire some kids to have a dream of going into the scientific field. Something like this reminds me of the show Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
This guy is a legend. Anybody in America, when they were in elementary school or middle school, they were hyped as fuck whenever their science teacher says they're watching Bill Nye for class today. He just had that presence where anything he said was so entertaining. And I know for a fact that there were tons of scientists out there who were inspired to work in the scientific field because of Bill Nye. Dr. Stone has the potential to do the exact same thing. And that's why I think it's a shonen anime that will pave a brighter future.